April 11th, 1241. The ground is slick with blood. The air, thick with the cries of the dying and the triumphant shouts of an unstoppable enemy, hangs heavy over the plains of Mohi. For the Kingdom of Hungary, one of Christian Europe's great powers, this isn't just a defeat, it's an apocalypse. An army of tens of thousands, perhaps as many as 50 to 60,000 at the highest estimates, the pride of the nation, has been systematically, almost supernaturally, wiped out. Its knights, bishops, and noblemen lie slaughtered. Its king is a fugitive, running for his life in a kingdom that is no longer his. This isn't the story of that battle. This is the story of what came next. This is the tale of King Béla IV's desperate flight, a year-long chase where every ally is a potential traitor and every shadow hides an assassin. It's the story of how one man's survival held the fate of a nation in his hands, and how, from the absolute depths of ruin, a kingdom would be reborn from the ashes, forged in the fires of the Mongol apocalypse. To understand the sheer terror of Béla's escape, you have to understand the disaster at the Sarjo River. The Mongol invasion of Europe was like a force of nature. This wasn't a raid. It was a multi-pronged, meticulously planned conquest led by Batu Khan, grandson of Genghis Khan, and orchestrated by the legendary general Subutai. They had already crushed the Rus's principalities, and now 3 separate armies were descending upon Hungary. King Béla IV saw the threat coming. He'd tried to prepare, even granting asylum to the nomadic Cuman people who were fleeing the Mongols, hoping their warriors would bolster his army. But his own nobles were deeply resentful of the pagan newcomers. Tensions exploded during the campaign itself. In the chaos following Mohi, their leader Coten was murdered by a mob in Pest, after which the surviving Cumans fled southward, abandoning Hungary at the worst possible moment. When the armies finally met at Mohi, the Hungarians were confident. Their force, tens of thousands strong, perhaps as many as 50 to 60,000 at the most optimistic count, a mix of royal soldiers, noble levies, and a contingent of Knights Templar, seemed formidable. On the night of April 10th, they even thought they'd won a major victory, bravely stopping a Mongol attempt to cross the main bridge over the Sarjo River. Convinced the enemy was in retreat, they returned to their camp to celebrate, leaving only a small guard. It was a fatal mistake. For the Mongols, this was all part of the plan. They were masters of deception. While the Hungarians celebrated, Subutai was setting his masterstroke in motion. He sent forces to build a hidden bridge to the south and ford the river to the north, all while the Hungarians were distracted. At dawn, the real assault began. Batu Khan unleashed a weapon most Europeans had never seen in open battle: giant stone-throwing trebuchets. These siege engines bombarded the Hungarian crossbowmen guarding the bridge, clearing the way for the Mongol vanguard. At the same time, Subutai's hidden forces stormed across the river from the south and north. Suddenly, the Hungarian camp, a fortress of wagons chained together, was being attacked from all sides. The Hungarians fought with desperate courage, but they were trapped. Crowded in their camp, they were easy targets for the endless storm of Mongol arrows. Then came the final cruel stroke of psychological genius. As the camp burned, Subutai ordered his forces to do something unthinkable. They opened a gap in their circle. For the terrified, surrounded Hungarians, it looked like a miracle, a path to escape. It was a trap. Hope is a powerful weapon, and Subutai used it against them. The Hungarian lines broke as soldiers, desperate to flee, dropped their weapons and made a mad dash for the opening. Once they were out in the open, scattered and running for their lives, the Mongol horse archers hunted them down. A man with his back turned is the easiest of targets. An eyewitness reported that the escape route was so choked with corpses that the ground was dyed crimson. The losses were catastrophic. Tens of thousands were slaughtered, perhaps 40 to 50,000, effectively the entire field army. 2 archbishops, 3 bishops, and a huge part of the kingdom's nobility were slain. And in the middle of this carnage, King Béla IV, with a small escort, managed to break free and run. The king was alive, but he was now a fugitive in a land about to be swallowed whole. The escape from Mohi was pure chaos. The king, moments before the commander of a great European army, was now a hunted man. Batu Khan had given a specific order. The king was to be captured alive. The Mongols didn't just want to conquer Hungary, they wanted to absorb it, and for that, they needed the legitimizing authority of its crowned ruler. If the order had been to kill, Béla would have died at Mohi. Instead, that order turned his escape into a relentless, year-long pursuit. His first frantic flight took him northwest toward the Austrian border. With every mile, the scale of the apocalypse became clearer. Observers described the Mongol advance as lightning. Hungary's defenses had completely collapsed. There was no army left to rally, no fortress that felt safe. The entire country east of the Danube was being ravaged. Béla was the living symbol of Hungarian sovereignty. As long as he was free, the kingdom hadn't officially fallen. But as long as he stayed in Hungary, he was a target. So Béla made a desperate choice. He would flee west to seek help from his neighbor and rival, Duke Frederick II of Austria. It was a huge gamble. Frederick was a known enemy. But with Mongol riders fanning out across his lands, Béla had no other choice. He was placing his life in the hands of his greatest foe. Upon crossing into Austria, any hope Béla had was crushed. Duke Frederick II saw not a refugee king, but an opportunity. Instead of offering aid, he treated Béla like a prisoner. The Duke, who had earlier made a brief appearance in Hungary only to abandon the fight, now showed his true colors. He effectively held the royal family captive and, under duress, extorted a massive ransom from the fugitive king. To secure his release, Béla was forced to sign away 3 of Hungary's western counties to Austria. It was the ultimate humiliation. A king forced to carve up his own kingdom, not by the conqueror who had destroyed his army, but by the Christian neighbor he had turned to for help. This betrayal was a brutal lesson. There was no united front against the Mongols. Local rivalries and greed were more important than any sense of shared duty. No help was coming. Having paid his ransom in gold and land, Béla was free but more alone than ever. He couldn't stay in Austria, and returning east was a death sentence. The city of Pest had been burned to the ground. With nowhere else to turn, Béla and his small retinue fled south, re-entering his own ravaged country and making for Zagreb. From there, he sent frantic letters to the Pope and other European kings, pleading for aid. But his words traveled slowly, and the Mongol pursuit was swift. Béla realized that no city on the mainland was safe. His only hope lay with geography. He continued his flight southwest toward the rugged coastline of the Adriatic Sea. His destination was Dalmatia, a region of fortified coastal towns and islands that might offer one last refuge. The King of Hungary was no longer fighting for his throne. He was fighting for his next breath, as a Mongol detachment under the command of Kadan, a son of the great Khan Ogodai, was sent with a single mission: to hunt him down. The chase was on. The journey to the Adriatic was a nightmare. King Béla was a ghost moving through the ruins of his own realm. Kadan's detachment was relentless, a spectre hanging over the royal party as they chased him from town to town. He and his family finally reached the coast and took sanctuary in the island fortress of Trogir, a walled city connected to the mainland by a bridge. It was a strong defensive position where the Mongols' cavalry would be useless. Dalmatian chroniclers later claimed the Mongols arrived on the shore just in time to watch the king's boat disappear towards the island fortress of Trogir. Béla took refuge within the stone walls of Trogir, a king in exile. In March of 1242, Kadan's forces arrived and laid siege to the mainland opposite the town. For Béla, this must have felt like the end. He had run out of land. He was cornered, his kingdom in ruins, and a Mongol army at his doorstep. The flame of Hungarian resistance, which he alone had kept alive for nearly a year, was about to be put out. While Béla was running for his life, his kingdom was dying. The Mongol occupation was a cataclysm. Having secured the plains, the Mongols unleashed a campaign of terror. The city of Pest was burned and its people massacred. Historical accounts paint a horrifying picture. Modern estimates suggest that between 20% and 50% of Hungary's population perished or fled, one of the worst demographic catastrophes in medieval European history. Some regions on the Great Hungarian Plain lost nearly their entire pre-invasion population. It was a demographic catastrophe on an almost unimaginable scale. A German monk at the time lamented, "This year, Hungary, which had existed for 350 years, was destroyed by the Tatars." But the Mongol conquest was stalled by one frustrating problem. The king was still free. Batu Khan's plan was to incorporate Hungary into the Mongol Empire, but without Béla's submission, they couldn't legitimize their rule. The king's escape had robbed them of their puppet. They could hold the land by force, but they couldn't truly govern it. This frustration was made worse by the fact that the Battle of Mohi, though a victory, had been costly. Batu's army had suffered significant losses, including many of his elite bodyguards, and he was hesitant to push further into Europe without reinforcements. Still, their immediate goal was to finish the job. In the harsh winter of early 1242, the Danube River froze solid. The great river that had served as a barrier was now a frozen highway. Mongol armies crossed the ice, pouring into the western half of the kingdom to complete the conquest. This was when Kadan was sent to hunt down Béla once and for all. As Kadan's forces massed on the coast opposite Trogir in March 1242, all seemed lost. But just as the final assault seemed imminent, something happened that no military strategy could have predicted. News arrived from the heart of the Mongol Empire. The great Khan, Ogodai, was dead. For the Mongol leadership, the death of the great Khan was an event of supreme political importance. Tradition demanded that all descendants of Genghis Khan return to the capital, Karakorum, to elect the next ruler. Batu Khan had ambitions of his own, and staying in Hungary to finish a regional conquest, while the fate of the entire empire was being decided, was politically unthinkable. The invasion of Europe had to be abandoned. The withdrawal was as swift as the invasion. Batu Khan gave the order, and the vast Mongol armies turned around and began the long march east, leaving behind a smoldering, depopulated wasteland. They had shattered a kingdom, but they had failed to conquer it. King Béla's desperate year-long flight had succeeded. He had outlasted them. His survival had denied them the ultimate prize, and now a twist of fate had saved him and what was left of his nation. As the dust settled, King Béla IV could finally leave the island of Trogir and begin the journey home, not as a fugitive, but as the king of a nation that needed to be rebuilt from the ground up. When King Béla returned to Hungary in the summer of 1242, he found a scene of utter desolation. But the king who returned wasn't the same man who had fled Mohi. The ordeal had forged him into a pragmatic and determined leader. He now faced a task more monumental than war, rebuilding a nation from scratch. His efforts would be so profound that he would earn the title, the second founder of the state. Béla understood the old ways had failed. The invasion had been a brutal lesson in his kingdom's weaknesses. His response was a series of radical reforms to ensure Hungary would never be so vulnerable again. First was defense. Béla realized the future of defense lay in stone fortifications. He launched an unprecedented castle-building program, encouraging his barons to erect stone fortresses on their own lands. Where there had been only a handful of stone castles before 1241, hundreds now began to dot the landscape. Towns were given royal grants to build strong walls. Next was repopulation. With so much of the population gone, Béla invited colonists from the Holy Roman Empire, Poland, and other regions to settle the empty lands. He even reconciled with the Cumans and settled them in depopulated areas to serve as a military buffer. Finally, he reformed the military and society. He invited heavily armored knights from Western Europe, who introduced new military tactics. He promoted the growth of fortified towns, creating new centers of commerce and royal authority, most notably by beginning the fortification of the hill that would become the new royal city of Buda, later fully developed in the 1250s to 70s. He also granted the Jewish population a charter of privileges in 1251 to ensure their safety and encourage their vital contribution to the economic recovery. Béla's reforms were a stunning success. He didn't just rebuild the old Hungary, he built a new, stronger one. And the ultimate proof? When the Mongols returned with a major raid in 1285, they were met not with an unprepared army, but with a network of stone castles and a reorganized military that successfully repelled the attack. The story of King Béla IV is a powerful reminder that history is not just made on the battlefield, but in desperate flights, shrewd reforms, and the sheer will to survive. These forgotten chapters are often the most compelling. If you find these tales of resilience as fascinating as we do, make sure you're subscribed and have pressed the bell icon to be notified of our future explorations into the past. The Mongol invasion of 1241 was one of the greatest calamities ever to befall a European nation. The Battle of Mohi is a terrifying testament to the military genius of the Mongol war machine. Yet, the story didn't end there. In the smoking ruins of his realm, a hunted king became the single point of resistance. King Béla IV's great escape was more than a flight for survival. It was a strategic act of defiance. By evading capture, he denied the Mongols their final victory and kept the idea of Hungary alive. His subsequent rebuilding of the kingdom is one of history's most remarkable comeback stories. The catastrophe forced Hungary to evolve and build a more robust defensive system that would serve it for centuries. Béla IV learned from the apocalypse and truly earned his title as the nation's second founder. His great escape wasn't just an epilogue to a massacre. It was the prologue to a resurrection, a dramatic flight that not only saved a king, but ultimately saved his kingdom.